Wyndham Clark just won his second U.S. Open. Then he went quiet. Not for months this time, just days. But those few days said almost as much as the trophy itself, because the silence came at the exact moment golf fans wanted answers the most. People were already watching him closely going into Shinnecock Hills. Clark's name carried weight from the year before, and that weight followed him through every round of that tournament. Then, right when he was supposed to be celebrating the biggest win of his career, a new controversy exploded online, and instead of addressing it, Clark disappeared from cameras again, the same way he had the year before. What he finally said when he broke that silence surprised a lot of people who expected him to deny everything outright. We'll get to those exact words soon, but first you need to understand what actually happened during that final round, because the win itself wasn't even the most talked about thing that weekend. So here's the real question. What was Clark hiding from this time, and why did golf fans turn on him again right after his biggest win? Stick around, because the answer says a lot more about him than the trophy does. Shinnecock Hills, June 2026. Clark walked into the final round with a commanding 6-shot lead, the kind of cushion that usually means a calm, celebratory Sunday for the leader. Instead, the crowd made it anything but calm. Fans openly heckled him from the very first holes, shouting things loud enough that police actually had to step in and eject multiple people from the gallery throughout the day. For a player chasing his second national championship, that's not the reception anyone expects walking up the first fairway, and it set the tone for everything that followed. Most fans assumed the hostility was simply leftover anger from Clark's reputation the year before, his locker room outburst at Oakmont still fresh in people's minds heading into the tournament. That assumption wasn't wrong, but it also wasn't the full story, because something else happened during that same final round, something that would end up overshadowing the win itself within hours of him lifting the trophy. On the 17th hole, Clark's tee shot landed in thick fescue rough near a camera stand positioned along the fairway. Under the rules, that allowed him relief from the obstruction, a fairly routine ruling on tour. He took his drop, cleared away loose grass around the area first, and when he dropped the ball, it rolled back toward the camera stand again, landing him in a noticeably better spot than where his original shot had actually finished. Golf fans watching online did not let that moment go quietly. Clips spread fast across social media, with one widely shared reaction comparing his ball placement to professional groundskeeping, accusing him of manipulating the situation in his favor rather than simply accepting the rules as written. Under the actual rules, nothing he did was illegal. He broke no regulation, and officials confirmed the drop was within bounds after reviewing it. But optics in professional golf rarely care about technicalities once a clip starts spreading across timelines, and this one spread everywhere within hours. Commentators picked it apart shot by shot, slowing the footage down frame by frame to argue both sides. Former players weighed in with opinions split right down the middle. Some called it smart use of the rules, the kind of thing any pro would have done given the same opportunity. Others called it exactly the kind of gray area that makes fans distrust the game's biggest stars, especially one already carrying a reputation problem. A few golf analysts pointed out that the rule itself has always been somewhat ambiguous, allowing players to remove loose impediments before a drop as long as they don't improve the lie intentionally. The debate quickly became less about Clark specifically and more about whether the rule itself needed clarifying, though that broader conversation did little to take the spotlight off him personally. His name was the one attached to every headline, every clip, every heated comment section, regardless of how the rule was written. One veteran rules official even told reporters this exact gray area had been debated internally for years, but rarely came up in a moment with this much attention on it, which only made the situation feel bigger than a typical rules dispute usually does. Clark still finished the round, still closed out the tournament under that pressure, and still walked away with his second U.S. Open trophy in hand. For most champions, that would be the headline leading every golf broadcast the next morning. For Clark, the headline became something else entirely, because the controversy didn't fade after Sunday the way these things usually do. It got worse, and this time it came from someone inside the sport itself. 2 days after the win, a PGA Tour caddy named Brent Henley posted a video publicly accusing Clark of bending the rules during that same final round. The clip showed Clark taking an unusual practice swing in the rough during the championship, and Henley's caption was blunt and direct. He believed Clark was cheating, plain and simple. That single post turned a fan debate into something much bigger, because this wasn't an anonymous account hiding behind a screen name. This was someone working inside professional golf, putting his real name and reputation directly behind the accusation. What made Henley's post carry even more weight was his position within the sport itself. Caddies see things up close that television cameras often miss. The subtle habits, the small adjustments, the things only someone standing a few feet away would notice round after round. When someone with that vantage point speaks up publicly, golf fans tend to listen differently than they would to a random comment online, and this case was no exception. The post racked up thousands of shares within the first day alone, with golf journalists picking it up almost immediately. The timing made everything worse for Clark. This wasn't an isolated complaint floating around either. Clark had already faced rules scrutiny before this tournament, a Bay Hill incident back in 2024 where he appeared to press down grass behind his ball before a shot, and another Bay Hill drop controversy in 2025 that sparked very similar debate online. To longtime fans who'd followed his career closely, the pattern felt familiar almost instantly, and Henley's video gave that pattern a fresh, very public headline, right when Clark should have been enjoying the best moment of his entire season. And then, just like the year before, Clark went quiet again. No statement addressing the caddie's accusation directly. No interview clearing things up for the fans demanding answers. While golf media debated whether he had crossed a line, the man at the center of it all said absolutely nothing for days, while a brand new U.S. Open champion would typically be doing victory laps through interviews and press tours. Fans noticed the gap immediately, and it didn't take long for the questions to start piling up. Why would someone with nothing to hide avoid the cameras at the exact moment people wanted answers the most? That question hung in the air for days, and the longer Clark stayed silent, the louder the speculation got across every golf platform online. Golf forums lit up with theories almost immediately. Some fans defended him completely, pointing out that officials had already reviewed the 17th hole drop and found no rule violation whatsoever. Others weren't convinced by that defense, arguing that legal and fair don't always mean the same thing in the court of public opinion, especially when video evidence keeps circulating. A few brought up his history again, the Oakmont lockers, the earlier Bay Hill incidents, framing this as just the latest chapter in a pattern nobody could ignore anymore, no matter how many times officials cleared him. Even some fellow players seemed surprised by how long he waited to respond, since most champions address controversy within a day or two at most, not nearly a full week of silence. Sponsors reportedly stayed cautious during that stretch too, watching the story unfold without weighing in either direction, which only added more weight to an already tense few days. Golf media kept the story alive with daily updates, replaying the 17th hole footage alongside Henley's accusation, comparing angles, asking rules officials for further clarification that never really satisfied either side of the debate. Talk shows debated it on air, radio hosts took caller after caller arguing both sides. For a sport that usually moves on from controversy within a news cycle or two, this one had unusual staying power, fueled by Clark's continued silence at every turn. A few major golf publications even ran side-by-side comparisons of the Henley video and the original broadcast footage, breaking down camera angles frame by frame, trying to settle a debate that ultimately came down to interpretation rather than anything definitive. Even casual fans who didn't normally follow rules debates found themselves pulled into this one, mostly because the visuals made it so easy to form an opinion without needing deep knowledge of golf's rulebook. That accessibility is part of what kept the story trending for as long as it did, far longer than most rules controversies usually manage to stick around once the initial outrage fades. Then Clark finally sat down for an interview on the Rich Eisen Show, and this is where the story actually shifts into something nobody fully expected. People watching assumed they'd get a defensive answer, maybe a flat denial, maybe more silence dressed up as a careful non-answer designed to avoid saying anything at all. That is not what they got from him. Clark addressed the hostility from the New York crowd directly first, admitting he was genuinely caught off guard by how aggressively fans turned on him despite his background representing the country at the Olympics and on the Ryder Cup team, moments most players consider career highlights. He made it clear he respects New York fans and didn't expect that level of animosity from his own countrymen during a national championship. But the real surprise came right after, when he stopped defending himself entirely and started owning his past instead of explaining it away. He openly admitted that some of the anger directed at him was self-deserved, no qualifiers attached to that statement. He said he had done things the year before that he genuinely regretted, things he wasn't proud of, and that he had already apologized multiple times even before sitting down for this particular interview. He said he was still sorry and that he hoped to eventually win the doubters over through how he carried himself going forward, not through arguing his case publicly every time a new controversy surfaced. He didn't bring up the 17th hole ruling to defend himself. He didn't mention Henley's accusation directly at all. He simply let the apology stand on its own, without using the rules clearance as a shield. Think about what that actually means coming from him at this exact moment. A player who just spent days avoiding cameras while a cheating accusation spread across golf media finally sat down and didn't deny anything, didn't deflect blame elsewhere, didn't lawyer up with rules technicalities to clear his name in front of a national audience. He simply acknowledged that his reputation was something he built himself, fair or not, and that the path back wasn't going to be a press conference defending one ruling. It was going to be time and consistency. That's the actual shock here, more than the win itself. Not that he claimed a hostile U.S. Open under a cloud of fresh controversy, impressive as that accomplishment genuinely was on its own. The shock is that the same player who stayed completely silent while a caddy publicly questioned his integrity turned around days later and gave one of the most self-critical interviews of his entire career, without a single excuse attached to any of it. Golf fans who expected another round of deflection got something closer to genuine accountability instead, and that shift caught almost everyone off guard, including some of his harshest critics from the year before. His history makes that response even more notable when you line it up side by side. This wasn't his first time facing rules questions on tour, and it wasn't his first time staying quiet under pressure either. But where the Oakmont silence stretched on for months with no real resolution in sight, this time he closed the gap fast, addressing things directly instead of letting the story fester indefinitely the way it had before. Whether that came from lessons learned the year before or simple practical advice from people closer to him now, the result was a noticeably different kind of response than fans had come to expect. So where does that leave him now? A two-time U.S. Open champion who just won the biggest tournament of the year while simultaneously defending his integrity in public, all within the same handful of days. He's not fully cleared in everyone's eyes, and the 17th hole clip will likely follow him for a while, regardless of what officials ruled on it. But he didn't hide from the conversation this time. Not for long, anyway. And for a player with his recent history, choosing to face it quickly instead of disappearing again says something real about where his head is at heading into the rest of the season. Golf fans have a long memory for moments like this. The controversial drops, the heckling, the silence, and now the response that followed all of it. Whether this interview actually changes how people see him going forward, or whether it just becomes another chapter in an already complicated reputation, is still being written one tournament at a time. What's clear right now is that Wyndham Clark's second U.S. Open title came with far more baggage attached than his first one ever did, and how he handles what comes next will matter just as much as the trophy sitting in his case. What do you think? Does owning up like that change how you see the 17th hole controversy, or does a rules technicality still feel like cheating no matter how he explains it afterward? Drop your take in the comments. I want to hear where you actually stand on this one. Stories like this are exactly why this channel exists. Real conversations about the players behind the headlines, not just the highlight reels everyone else is showing you. If you want more breakdowns like this one, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next. Wyndham Clark's silence is broken again, but this time the questions didn't take a year to get answered. And whether that's enough for golf fans is still very much up for debate.